welcome to Braver Leaders, the podcast. Today I wanted to talk about power, the power that you have. If you are in the UK, you'll be aware that two recent results in by-elections meant that the Conservatives basically got trounced and Labour won. And people are already predicting that Labour will be in power after the next general election. But will it make any real difference? I wonder. Perhaps some superficial changes, but what do you know, if you're in the UK or indeed outside the UK, about the the core values of your leader? If you are a supporter of Keir Starmer, Sir Keir, what do you know? What do you know about the core values of Rishi Sunak? Now, I'm struggling with both of them, and I think that one of the issues that we can tend to have these days is that politicians are so media aware. Information is instantaneous. They're getting feedback on what the public want to hear and will spin, turn on a dime to say, oh yeah, that's what I support. This is important, in the hope of gaining more votes or retaining power. And whether they believe that or not is what remains to be seen. And we've also had the strange situation where over the last few years politicians have tied themselves in knots to not comment but appear to say something. Now, is that their problem or is it ours? Well, yes, it's definitely our problem, but why put up with it? Shouldn't we be encouraging them to have an opinion, and if we disagree with it, then great. You know, we shouldn't all be the same, and if we disagree, then also we can discuss, we can probe. And this is what I wanted to get on to, that if you look at the state of play right now, it does seem, to me at least, that it doesn't really matter who is actually in power. There are some differences sometimes, but a lot of the time there seems to be very little difference. Things are so homogenized. Now, the great machine, the machinery of state has to roll on. There are certain things that have to happen, certain protocols, of course. But ultimately, it seems to me there's less and less to choose between politicians. In the UK, I think there are around about 67 million people, getting a bit crowded, it's a small place. The States, far larger, also has a large population, 340 million-ish, I think, round about that. And then you look at who the candidates are, or shaping up to be, Biden and Trump. And what's the choice? I mean, if you look at Biden with any calm, sane, rational lens, then he doesn't look fit to be in that role. And I'm not necessarily talking about memory problems. He may or may not have them. He appears to get a bit wandered, but that's a tough role. It's tough, public speaking, all those cameras. I don't think it's that particularly that worries me, although that does worry me quite a lot as well. He's a liar. You know, he's been shown to make things up about his exploits. And there's this whole hissy fit temperamental aspect to his personality, which I think really that's not a great role model for people. Getting annoyed, no, I didn't say that. And I could, let me cut him some slack and say maybe those are honest reactions. But I just don't think, to come back to that role model idea, he's ideal. And then you look at Trump. And of course, a lot of people put up with Biden. They can't really stand the fact he's in power, and they know he shouldn't be, but because he's anybody but Trump. What an insane, pathetic, useless place for the planet to find itself in. How did we get to that stage? Anyone but Trump. And of course, Trump is seen as the big saviour, and he'll rock the boat and drain the swamp, or whatever stuff he was coming up with before. Did he? Didn't seem to me that he did. Maybe he tried his best and couldn't do it. I don't know. I wouldn't really want to work in the same orbit as Trump. I don't think we would get along, but I don't think I'd get along with Biden either. My point is that it's Tweedledum and Tweedledee. 340 million people-ish in the US, and that's it. Come on, the US has got really, really smart, articulate, clever, wise, intelligent, principled, moral, ethical people in great quantity. This is just the odd person. And yet this is who we see. We see it probably because a lot of people don't want to go into politics. And I think we also see it because, well, the people who do go in seem to get crushed and diminished by the system. And again, the same in the UK. So we have these two new people who have won by-elections, and I don't know them at all, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were highly principled, if they were keen, if they really wanted to make a difference. And yet, will they? The system itself seems to be rigged. The system itself seems to not enjoy any perturbations. It dampens them quite quickly. It's a little bit like trying to punch blancmange. It's just absorbed. You know, the people that go in are just absorbed into the system, drained perhaps of life, of integrity, of morals. Well, maybe not. They're certainly drained of energy to think they can make a difference. And I come back to, yes, the mechanisms of state, the machinery has to be there, but that machinery needs to serve. Just like we need to remind ourselves that these people are there to serve. It's a very odd thing happened the last few years where it seems to me, and I'm not alone, that there's a very much a them and us vibe about things these days. You know, we are the us, they are the them, the club of the elite. And they give me the impression a bit like the physician who might say the job would be great if it wasn't for the patients. You know, this job, politics, would be brilliant if it wasn't for the population, those darn voters that we have to try and dance around. Now, let me paint not too depressing a picture, because I think there are a lot of good things about a lot of countries like the US and like the UK and other places that are close by me, Germany, Denmark, Norway, etc., Spain, France. I'm not going to name them all. And there are places that look a little bit totalitarian. They look a little bit totalitarian because they are totalitarian. And you may say, yeah, but we're in a kind of, you know, gilded cage. It's not as free as it looks. No, I don't think it is. But you try and offer up any dissent to some of those other leaders in some of those other countries, and well, it could be pretty tough going for you. And yes, I know that in terms of speaking out, freedom of speech, protesting, marching, there have been moves to clamp down on that stuff, and we've got to be careful. We're going to be so careful that we do not lose that ability, because the ability to laugh at a politician, the ability to take the mickey, so to speak, to have humour which deflates pomposity, that includes us and our friends and our family, and of course it includes politicians. That is crucial. That is essential. And so what can we do? Well, I've come up with some ideas before. And maybe here's a couple that you haven't heard from me. One is to recognise that decent people do go into politics. Some bad people go in for nefarious reasons, the wrong reasons. They go in to gain the power, the influence, the network, etc. and ultimately to make some money, not necessarily from being a politician, although I wouldn't mind the salary, but for the spin-offs, the things that can happen later when they leave politics or alongside. So those people, we don't really want them there, but they're there. But the good people, the moral people, the ethical people who have not been blanched by that blancmange of, what would we call it? I think actually inertia. It is inertia, isn't it? It's just not the way we do things around here. Well, it's time it was. And so those people we need to support, we need to help. How can we help? I think there are two main ways. One, we can demand as a population that we have more transparency, that we have the ability to question, that we have the ability to put everyone who's in a position of power on probation. It should be a permanent probationary period. Probationary periods in the workplace are common. and depending on the role they can be short or quite long. Anybody in those positions has to be permanently on probation. The panopticon of our ability to view what they are doing at different times has to be there. We need to understand, what is your diary like? What are you doing day to day? What was that meeting about? Now you might think, well, no, we don't need that level of detail. Perhaps not, but we do need to know what's going on. Because we need to figure out, at what point were you compromised? Because if you went in with these ideals, what happened? And yes, I understand there can be trade-offs. I understand that sometimes, because it happens in life as well, we've got to say, hey, if I do this, will you do that? And it's not too far away from my value set. I don't feel that it's immoral. I don't feel that it's unethical. I'm not comfortable about it, but I can live with it. It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. Yes, we do that. But when we have politicians who think this is a bad thing, this is awful, then we have to protect them. How? Well, partly, as I say, we need transparency. And also, when that happens, that probationary period for everybody in power, including the new person, they have to have a hotline. Not to Batman, but to us. We're Batman. To the public. They have to have the ability to say, I'm blowing a whistle on this, this is what happened. And they have to be protected. They have to be protected by the public, by us. And how do we do that? Well, we spread that news. We use social media properly. Citizen journalists, sometimes people call certain individuals who report on things, but that's all of us. We've all got to be Spartacus. We've all got to say, this is wrong. If we want to change it, we have to change it ourselves, our behaviours. We cannot sit back on our backsides and watch the world go by and go, well, there's nothing I can do. Well, if that's what you believe, that's true. So let's have that hotline. I mean, how difficult would it be? And you might not expect certain news outlets to report on it. Possibly not, because of course they're controlled, sometimes by the same people, often by the same people, same group. So a lot of money, a lot of careers at stake. But we have this stuff now. We have this technology to reach out and communicate instantaneously, pretty much worldwide. So let's use it, and let's use our voices and our ability to offer up dissent, criticism, and to prick that bubble of pomposity and intrigue and amoral, immoral, unethical, outrageous behaviour. And I think the other thing that we need to do in terms of the probationary period, apart from protecting those people who do find themselves beginning to be compromised, is to have the ability to sack, to oust more readily, more easily, just like you would do in a corporation. We're the shareholders. After all, it's your money, and it's not the government's money, it's your money. And also, I think that what we should be able to do, apart from protecting those individuals, apart from that probationary period for everyone, is we need to understand that when things go wrong, then it shouldn't be a surprise, because we should have had debates. We should understand who these characters are. You see, what we can be guilty of is the quick swipe left or right, or the scroll to get that so-called anticipatory and reward-centred dopamine hit, amongst other things. We've got to stretch our attention spans and encourage TV stations, and if not them, then podcasters, to have long-form conversations with people who are in power and want to get in power, and get away from this quick fix. There are certain TV programmes where it's gladiatorial, and you'll have a panel, sometimes of experts, but often politicians. And what do? They give the soundbite, and they look for the applause. As often as not, they get it. Then the other politician with a different viewpoint does his or her, and looks for the applause. And they get the applause from perhaps a different part of the audience. And then sometimes they do the and then it's tumbleweed. There's no applause. That's quite funny. But we're looking, all of us, for the quick fix. Not all the time. And we've got to train ourselves to understand that life isn't simple like that. We need to delve deeper. We need to have these long-form conversations with the people who are in power and the people who want to get in power. And in that way, when things go wrong, it shouldn't be a surprise. If it is a surprise, then there hasn't been enough transparency. So, probation periods for everyone, the ability to oust, and that means accountability, and that means transparency in real time, and also long form conversations with people who are already in those positions and those who want to get in those positions, so we understand who we've got. And then with a whistleblower hotline to the back team, us, then people can feel protected and can feel strong enough and brave enough to say, I don't agree with that, this is corrupt and I'm calling it, and they need to call on us and we need to back them up. And I don't think that is impossible, far from it. But what I do think is, if we continue to go, okay, so it's Trump or Biden or Starmer or Sunak, is this the best we have? Do these people care? Ever felt a little bit removed from them? They're not really living in the same world? If we want something different, and this applies to other countries of course as well, Canada, New Zealand, Germany, France, etc, 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 then we have to demand it. Remember, they are a tiny percentage of the population. The power lies with us if we use our voices legally and peacefully, but loudly.